welcome to bonus topic 17. And periodically I do these little bonus discussions which combine a little bit of everything. They have some of the meditation component, they have some of the internal map of reality. And I have been doing a series kind of related to health. This is related to something that I am very excited about. Think about it a lot, work with it a lot, and that is your circulatory systems. Circulatory systems are extremely important, and there are many ways of enhancing your circulatory system. So this episode tonight is really going to look at the different types of circulatory systems in our body, why and how they are important, and more importantly, how can we enhance them? And I'll give you a little bit of a heads up right off the top. I use meditation and Tai Chi as my primary tools for circulating. It's sometimes called circulation of Qi. The Qi Kung and Tai Chi, circulation of energy, circulation of Qi. So let's get right into it. And here are the topics that I'll be looking at and sharing with you. First, just talk a little bit about what a circulatory system is in general. And then more specifically, we'll talk about it as it pertains to the practice of meditation and Tai Chi and Qi Kung. And I'm going to break it down into systems that I call necessary for the sustaining of life. What are the key systems that if you don't have, you don't live? So what are the top systems there? Then I'll look more at functional systems, systems that are necessary to function in a healthy, happy mode. If these systems are malfunctioning, you usually exhibit some kind of illness. Then I go into systems that are more along the line of maintenance. They support the functional systems. You still need the maintenance systems, but and as you'll see in the presentation, some of them, if they stop functioning correctly, you can live quite well for a few months. And then I'll move into what I call energy systems, and energy is exactly what it means. The energy that drives your system. In the case of a car, it's the gasoline that you put in the tank that runs your car. And then finally, I'll wrap it up with a spiritual system. And this will, in a sense, combine my approach to three-body centering, where I combine the spirit body, the energy body, and the spirit, and the physical body. Okay, mind, body, spirit. So let's take a look at it. When we are talking about circulation, we're talking about things movement. So it implies movement. It also implies that things are going to be exchanged. In order for that movement to take place, there's an exchange, and we sometimes call that exchange energy. In scientific realms, it is defined as heat. Heat and energy are equated together, and that gives you all kinds of interesting theories about thermodynamics and energy transfer. So on this little chart, you can see that fire produces carbon dioxide, which in turn affects the sun, and the sun breaks the carbon dioxide into oxygen, into carbon, and that oxygen combines with hydrogen to give you water, and that water produces, and combined with the sun, produces growth, plants grow, and then we can burn the plants in our fuel or in a fire. Just a simple example of the coexistence of one property migrates into another property, and they coexist. It's a symbiotic relationship. The example that I work with, and I mentioned at the very beginning, here's the yin-yang symbol. It's the classic symbol. It's thousands of years old that shows the transfer of yin energy into yang and back and forth. Little point to notice here that in the yin, which you could classify as the white teardrop, there's a little bit of yang. And in the yang energy, classified or depicted as the black teardrop, there's a little bit of yin. And this is important because this becomes like a control factor. And we'll talk about this later on, that you need to have that balance. It can't be 100% one or the other. I want to point out here that my first instructor, the Taoist monk, was insistent on the angle or the direction of the flow of the energy. All right, he said that when it flows like depicted here, that means creation or life. And if it was flipped and reversed, it would depict degeneration and death. So I kind of go with his version, the yin energy, the white energy, moving into the dark energy. However you like to depict it, the sense here is that you can almost see the movement here. Okay, the final little point I want to make out here, notice that this is a contained system. So when we use the word system, it implies that it is self-contained and that the system and the variables in there are all interacting. Now, there are open systems and closed systems, and in life, every system is actually an open system. Even though the variables are interacting with each other, energy is given out and energy is taken into this system and processed. This is how we as humans are made. All of our systems are open systems where we bring something into the system, we process it, and then release it. You'll see this as we go into the examples. So what do we have next? We have the life-sustaining systems. Now, I want to point out here that this is a combination of 4 systems. It looks like one, but it's really 4 separate systems. In the little graphic, it calls it a double circulatory system, but it's actually 4 separate systems working as 2 separate systems. So let's break it down a little bit. So you see on the bottom there's the heart in the center bottom, and it is divided into 2 separate systems. The arterial system, which is the red oxygenated blood, and the venous system, which is the exhausted blood that's the oxygen has been used, carbon dioxide may have been put into the venous blood, and it returns to the heart. At that point, in order to oxygenate that venous blood, that's the blue that you see there, it sends it up to the lungs. And the lungs then dissipate the carbon dioxide, you breathe it out, and you breathe in oxygen, and that is put into the blood. It is then oxygenated, comes back to the heart, and then pumped through the body. The reason I call these 4 separate systems, again, let's take the heart as an example. There's something at the very bottom there. You'll see the capillaries. And in this depiction, it makes it look like they are connected. They are not physically connected. The capillaries end and absorb from what is called the intercellular fluid. So it just is drawing in from this fluid that surrounds all of your cells. These 2 systems are separate. So the arterial system for the heart pumps blood out, and the venous system of the heart draws blood in, but they are not physically connected. So the venous system is a separately functioning system on its own that receives blood like a yin, receives blood in, then sends that blood up to the lungs. And in a sense, the lungs have a pump, your diaphragm, and that has a negative pressure which draws the venous blood up, oxygenates it, gets rid of the carbon dioxide, and sends it back. Again, notice here at the very top, you'll see that The lungs have capillaries too. The lung capillaries, again, it depicts them as being connected. They are not connected. They're separate. So the capillaries just end and are absorbing or transmitting. Okay? So 4 different systems appearing to be 2 different systems, and in the case of the heart. Now, why do I call these life systems? If the lung stops working, you die within seconds. I think most people can hold their breath for around a minute, but after that, you go unconscious. And if the heart stops working, you die immediately. I want to point out here that in the situation where there is a synchronization error, where the heart and lung get out of sync, you get these strange vibrations or fibrillations in the heart. The way they correct that is with electricity. So an electric shock treatment, sometimes a pacemaker is installed in the heart, and all it does is it sends off a regulated electric shock to the heart to keep it beating at a regular pace. Similarly, the diaphragm works the same way. The heart and diaphragm are very closely related and very sensitive to electrical charge. You may know that if you get an electrical shock, that may stop your breathing. Okay? So in case you get electric shock, some people find that you lay on the floor and push in on your lungs, or put a fist in your diaphragm and push it in, or get someone to give the Heimlich maneuver for you. Anyway, life-sustaining, very important. And there's the other point I want to make here as part of the synchronization. Notice the arrows. The flow of the blood or fluid is in a specific direction. So when we think about circulatory systems, we normally think of fluids. And in the case of the lungs, air is considered a fluid, although it's very thin, okay? And if it gets denser, it becomes water. In any event, very important. So how can you regulate this with meditation and Tai Chi? Well, what they have found is that the smooth, slow movements of Tai Chi actually are consistent with the outflow of your arterial blood to your limbs and the inflow of the venous blood back to your heart. So the movements themselves are very important for both the lung system, right? The pulmonary system and your arterial system, venous system. So even though the heart does have a muscle and very functional, and the lungs have the diaphragm, your movements, by getting up and walking and doing conscious movements, particularly the very accurate, slow movements of Qigong or Tai Chi, are designed to maximize the benefits for your heart and lungs. Okay, so let's move on now. Let's look at another circulatory system, and this is your lymph system. And you can see that the lymph system flows all through the body, but it is not everywhere. So the lymph system deposits information into that intercellular fluid that is all through the body, and that fluid then communicates with the individual cells in your body. Notice here that there are specific glands that link into the lymphatic system. So we have your tonsils and your thymus gland and your lymph nodes and your spleen. And one here that we'll be talking about further on is your bone marrow. The point I want to make here is that notice that the lymph system is dependent on your movement. If you are not moving, then the only thing the lymph system has to transport its information around the body is gravity. So by moving, you are promoting the flow of fluid. Now you may have or may not know of something called a lymphatic massage. Those are fantastic. A trained therapist knows how to massage your body to direct the lymph fluid for drainage or for redistribution. Again, yoga, tai chi, and stationary meditation has a way of promoting lymphatic movement. The lymph system provides you protection, your immune system. It also regulates the fluids in your body. Okay, so it has a big role to play in fluid regulation. It interacts with the digestive tract by taking fats and depositing fats into the digestive system. And it also will be like a housekeeper and collecting cells that have, your cells do deteriorate and they do die on a regular pattern, billions of them every day. And those are deposited again in your digestive tract by the lymph system. So there's that drainage to clean away your body. Very important system. And again, I'll mention the Qigong Tai Chi meditation combination specifically is designed to help out with the lymphatic system. Also notice here that the systems, the two systems I mentioned, the arterial and the venous systems, and the lung system, the arterial, energy or information flows in specific directions. This ties into the yin and yang flow. So lymph information flows out, which is yang, and then lymph information flows inward, which is yin. Okay, so some of the vessels that you see here are transporting information out, and some are bringing information in. In general, in the body, a communication link such as a lymph system or artery or vein is a one-way flowing device. Okay, so your arteries flow out and your veins flow in. Okay, so moving on. So with that in mind, let's look at more of a functional fluid, your cerebrospinal fluid. Very, very, very important. And this is where we run into this interesting term, the blood-brain barrier. There's a barrier that prevents infection from getting into this fluid. If it does, then you're looking at something called meningitis, which is extremely, extremely damaging. So this fluid, it provides nutrient for the brain. Now, how important is the brain in the spine? Well, any of you that have had a spinal injury or head injury knows that all conscious movement is derived from the spine and the brain. So this cerebrospinal fluid is feeding all of the mechanisms that allow you to function. Extremely important. And the fluid provides support for the brain. The brain is kind of cushioned, right? And so is the spinal cord, kind of cushioned and protected by this fluid. So it provides support and lubrication. Now, one thing I found out extremely interesting is that in this fluid, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of chemicals being manufactured constantly. So these chemicals are information. So when the brain wants to communicate something to your body or anywhere, it will create a chemical that is designed for that purpose. And these chemicals are extremely elaborate, which is why some cultures are very, very concerned about diet, detoxing, the cleaner. You don't want to interfere with the chemical production of the body because these chemicals, through osmosis, are sent throughout the body. You can look that up, but the brain is sometimes called the world's most amazing chemical factory. And as I mentioned, these are for communications. Notice again that there's a direction to the flow. Some of you may have heard of the cranial sacral movement. Well, this flow goes through all of your spinal fluid into your sacrum, and there's a rhythm to it. It's almost like the raising of a tide and the falling, the ebbing and the falling of a tide. Now, there are massage techniques for this. I've had a little bit of exposure with it, and it is simply amazing. If you have the time and money to get a massage, cranial sacral massage, go for it. Again, the same thing with the lymphatic massage. And important, when I was studying to be a massage therapist, a traditional massage therapist, the direction of the massage is vital. You need to be very aware of the flow of the current. Again, if it gets reversed, there's serious damages that can happen. Okay, so that's the functional cerebral. So let's look at another one that's kind of important, the fluid in the eyes. And this fluid that it holds the eye, provides, pressurizes the eye, keeps it floated. It supports vision. So light travels through the cornea, through the lens, flows through this liquid. Now, as you can imagine, this liquid has to be pure, has to be clear. And this is something called a floater. I've got a few of them. That happens as you age. You'll get little pieces of debris floating in this liquid, and you'll see things floating in your eyes. So, but this is a pure liquid, and it flows. It doesn't just sit there like a jelly. It flows through the entire orbit of the eye, outside, around the cornea. And what is it doing? Well, it's providing nourishment to all of the parts of the eye. It's cleaning your lens. It's cleaning both sides of the lens, right? And in the back of the eye, where you have all of your retina and all of your very light-sensitive cells, those are very, very, very hungry cells. If you've ever done a lot of work and reading, and your eyes get tired, you notice that you can almost hardly see. And if you close your eyes, there's some really nice eye massages that, perhaps we can do a little session on that. Eye exercises and eye massages. And if you rest your eyes, and then when you open your eyes, it's fresh again. Or the one I like is if you take a meditation and you sit quietly for 5 or 10 or 15 or even a half an hour or an hour. At the end of the meditation, when you open your eyes, it's like seeing for the first time again. Your eyes have rested. Okay, very important. Okay, so that's a fluid, I think, that gets kind of not really discussed. And you're thinking, well, how can this fluid be exercised? Well, believe it or not, through meditation and Qigong and Tai Chi, you will be exercising your eyes. This is not normally talked about, say, in a beginner's class, but as you progress through your things, the focus of where you're looking and how you're focusing becomes very important, both in your meditation and in your Tai Chi. Now, some of you that maybe have been following along know that in the detachment meditation, where I suggest you can try it with your eyes open or with your eyes closed, I give you something to look at, something to focus on. With your eyes closed, you focus on the fuzzy dot, and with your eyes open, you pick a spot in front of you, say on a wall, eye level, that you focus on. Now, don't get triggered by the word focus. Focus doesn't mean obsessed or fixated. It means that it's something that when you lose consciousness, you return to that point. It's giving you a known central point to return. And this is very important, that you have that ability to recognize when you've lost consciousness, you've gone into a dream, and then you have the ability to what I call detach from that dream and go back to focusing on that spot on the wall or your fuzzy dot with your eyes closed. By the way, that fuzzy dot is caused by the optic nerve. When you close your eyes, any light residue, light energy that's in the eye is perceived by the brain as light. Again, I might mention that the flow of information from the eye through the optic nerve is an electrical flow that goes to the area of the brain that processes information. Again, very important to recognize the fact that there is a fluid in there, and there are exercises that you can do to promote proper eye health in that fluid. There's also the benefit of certain foods that will provide the proper fats, because you need fats. Those are all fats. You need those. And also the importance of relaxation. So when you relax through your meditation or through your practice of Tai Chi or Qi Kung, it relaxes that whole area around the eye. Have you ever talked to someone who is very, very, very anxious, and you look at what happens around the eye, their pupils dilate and they become very, very intense pressure, and you want to relax that pressure? Okay, moving on. Let's look at the bone. Now, most people would think of the bone as being a rigid structure and, just basically being like wood. But actually, the bone is vital. All of your blood is produced in the bone marrow. So all your blood cells, billions and billions of cells, are produced every day inside of your bone marrow. And there's different classifications of bone marrow. You can see here there's the yellow bone marrow and the red bone marrow. You can look these up to find out, but the thing is that there's something alive inside the bones, and they're doing things. So your red blood cells, your white blood cells, and all of your platelets are created in the bone marrow. So healthy bone marrow is important. So the question is, okay, well, if all of the blood cells and platelets are made in the bone marrow, how does it get out of the bone? Right? So wait a minute, because the bone is a very hard substance. Well, not quite. The bone is porous. So what happens is through osmosis, these platelets and blood cells are released into this fluid, the intercellular fluid, and your venous cells pick them up. Your venous capillaries pick them up and return them to the heart. Your arterial cells are pumped out, and those ones that are wasted or perished are picked up by the lymph system and put out. So this flow of red blood cells into the intercellular fluid, the flow of new blood cells from the bone marrow into the intercellular fluid, the lymph system collecting up blood cells that are no longer functioning, cleansing them, getting rid of the waste, and then the venous system collecting up through the capillaries the blood cells that are drained. And this is done. You wonder, well, how does the venous system know which blood cells need to be collected and so on and so on? It is by ionic resolution. So when a red blood cell is fully charged with oxygen, it has a certain electrical charge. And blood cells that have depleted their oxygen and have absorbed carbon dioxide change their polarity. And that's how they are attracted back and forth. This is another hint for why you need to consider forms of exercise that will neutralize your body's energy fields, and to eat foods. This is another whole topic, but certain foods will promote the proper balance. I'll be talking about the yin-yang balance later on, but this balance, and sometimes, a good example, we could maybe just jump right to your pH balance. So the pH balance of your blood and of your intracellular fluid then allows for the proper movement of these cells when they're charged negatively or when they're charged positively. Okay? And through osmosis, information is going out. Note again, the direction of the flow is from the bone marrow into the intercellular fluid. Okay? Cells do not move into the bone marrow. I could be corrected on this, but it's my understanding that cells wasted cells go into the lymph system, and cells that require recharging go into the venous system. What goes into the bone marrow is nutrient, and that is done again through the electrical polarity of the nutrients that are left in the intercellular fluid. Quite an amazing system. So there's a flow to it. One thing I want to point out here, that if your bone marrow begins to deteriorate through whatever illness, there's a number of them that can affect your bone marrow. The information I saw is that, in less than 1 year, you might perish. So you can go for a while with issues with bone marrow, but not a long time. So you need to keep your healthy bone marrow. So how can you keep your bone marrow healthy if it's the source of all of your red and white blood cells and your platelets? How do you do it? Through exercise and meditation. There's a specific form of way of moving that relaxes, believe it or not, that relaxes the bone and promotes circulation of oxygen around that sheath that surrounds the bone. Have you ever eaten, say, a chicken bone? There's that membrane that surrounds the bone. Very important. That's where all the exchange of nutrient happens. Well, the way that you move, the way that you move will determine how that sheath behaves. So this is why slow movements in yoga or Tai Chi and Qigong promote the relaxation of that sheath around the bones. Okay? Think about it. Okay, let's move on and let's look at a huge system, the nervous system, which is not necessarily always thought of as being a fluid, but it is. The information that flows from the brain down the spinal column along these nerves to whatever part of your body that the nerve is going acts like a fluid. So pay attention. The fluid, just like the venous system and the arterial system, the nerves flow in one direction. So there are nerves that send information out, and there are nerves that return information in. The sending out is yang, the receiving in is yin. So your nervous system turns off and on like a yin and yang, sending information out through the yin nerves and receiving information in. You have billions and billions of these nerves. Now, one thing I really want you to understand, that from the spinal cord to the tip of your finger, there is a single neuron, a single cell that is the length from your spine to the tip of your finger. So when you can feel something with the tip of your finger, you take your finger and you rub it, right? You touch something with it. From the tip of your finger to your spine is one neuron, one cell. And you can see here in the picture, it draws a line. I know at one point I used to think, oh, it's like the arteries and the veins that are like made up of multiple cells. No, the nerves are very particular. And why do I consider it a flow? Well, have you ever fallen asleep on your arm and found that your hand fell asleep? You can actually just put pressure on a nerve. And in some martial arts, this technique is applied for self-defense. But you can put pressure on a nerve, and that area that nerve is moving to, sending information to, or the ones that are receiving information, it will block the flow of the electrical information. Okay? So the nerves are very, very important. And I want to mention here that there are voluntary responses that we can make. We can brush our hair, brush our teeth, walk, sit down, stand up. But the bulk of the movements that happen inside and around our body are involuntary. So if most of the movements that your body makes are not controlled by your conscious voluntary focusing, how in the heck can we work them? Well, indirectly. And this is again where Qigong, Tai Chi, meditation, and yoga come into play. These movements and these postures, and more importantly, the way that you move. And this is why I stress in Tai Chi the three components of it. You move consciously, right? Mindfully. You move slowly because the body actually moves energy very slowly. And you move very accurately. So consciously, slowly, and accurately. And these nerves, these 80 to 100 billion nerves, this is how we learn. So we talk about body learning. If you've ever played an instrument like a piano or a guitar, the number of actions that take place are amazing. So there is a flow, and some nerves flow energy out, and some flow information back. Very important to be aware of. Okay, moving along. Let's look at our energy system, a very, very complicated system, which is our digestion system. So, from beginning to end, information goes in our mouths in the form of food or water, and that can be called the ingestion. So you take things in through your mouth, and it's propelled throughout your body through a system of muscle movements, right, that are involuntary. You don't control them directly. Okay, so these movements that pushes the food through the body and mechanically digests the food. The food's broken up and digested. There's acids that melt them. Then once the food are broken into small particles, there's a chemical process that takes place, and the amino acids that the body wants and the various chemicals that your body needs for cellular respiration are drawn out of the intestines and into the blood and utilized. I want to point out here that in this picture you'll see that the liver, which is actually quite huge, plays a huge role. The liver is considered, along with the brain, as being a chemical factory. Your liver knows how to process enormous numbers of chemicals and to neutralize them and to repurpose them. Okay, so after it's done the ingestion through your mouth and it's pushed through the body to the peristalsis movement, and then it's mechanically broken up and digested, pre-digested, then chemically released and distributed through the walls of the stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. And this is called the absorption phase. I want to point out that the absorption phase starts almost right away, because some foods that we eat can be taken into the body, into our bloodstream, right at the mouth. So if you've ever had some orange juice, you get that sugar from that orange juice as soon as it gets into the mouth, and it's digested and goes right into the bloodstream. It doesn't even make it to the large intestine. Some food's digested in the stomach. A lot of meat is digested right in the stomach and in the very first part of the small intestine. Then things that are a little bit harder to digest, like plants, are digested further on in the small intestine. And then finally, anything that was fibrous gets stored up in the large intestine. And finally, we have defecation and we remove it. What an amazing system to flow. And I just want to point a couple things. There is a direction from the flow. Normally it goes from the mouth through the bowels, and then we exit out. Occasionally, the system can get confused. If you've ever had acid reflux or nausea, and those are for specific reasons. So how can meditation help this because this is primarily an involuntary action, the whole digestive system process. Even when you put food in your mouth and chew it, you may think it's a conscious effort, but really there's a lot going on in the mouth that's totally unconscious. You're not aware of it. I remember one dentist telling me that the power of the jaw when it crushes down on a piece of food is amazing. It's just so much power, and that they stop within a very, very, very minute distance of your teeth from banging. So when you chew, your teeth very seldom bang, right? This is all controlled by your nervous system involuntarily. So here again, where meditation comes in. Through meditation, you can reset the normal processing of your involuntary muscles. You can calm them down. And one of the things for anyone who has irritable bowel or any of those kinds of problems associated with digestion, meditation is strongly recommended. Why? Because it helps you reestablish that normal involuntary movement of the body. All kinds of stuff that we can go on about this, but the bottom line here is we take in a raw product, and at the end of it, the body gets its energy. I did a video on cellular respiration. I will be doing another video on cellular health, because I think everything kind of boils down to the health of the cell. So I'll do a separate video on that. But this is the health of the cell is depending on the effectiveness of your digestive system. So let's look at another energy system, the Meridian system. Now, this is an ancient system primarily out of China, but it's worldwide. And this is where, when I mentioned the yin and yang balance, the yin is the receptive energy, where energy is flowing into you, and yang is the outgoing, transmitting energy that's going out of you. So you have 12 meridians, and they're listed here on this chart. But what I want you to notice about this is that they flow in the body. These are not the lines for your nerves. The meridian lines are points along these flow lines that are measurable, and they're consistent. So the point for, say, your heart meridian is the same for everyone, every person, regardless of your sex, your age, your ethnicity. They're all the same. In fact, you can use these meridian pressure points for balancing the yin and yang flow of energy in their body through with animals and perhaps even with plants. Okay, so here's the point I want to make. There is a flow of energy, yin and yang, in the body. Some of the organs in your body are considered bags, such as your lungs, considered like a bag, works like a bag. Your stomach kind of works like a bag. And some of the areas of the body function like tubes. Your intestines function like tubes. So what's the role of a bag and a tube? Well, a bag stores information and a tube delivers it. So this yin-yang balance is the balance between the organs in your body that store energy and the organs in your body that deliver energy. Okay, well, if something is delivering energy, it must be yang. And if something is storing, receiving energy, it must be yin. So it's the balance of yin organs with yang organs, and the flow of energy is balanced through these acupuncture points. Now, these points are measurable. There are electronic equipment. Basically, it's very sensitive voltmeters, and you can measure these points. You can find the points, and they're repeatable, they're predictable. And this is all tied into an integrated, holistic view of the meridian system, the yin-yang balance. It's not just the lines and points in your body. It has to do with your thoughts, it has to do with your food. It's a holistic approach, okay? So those of you who have had acupuncture may think of it as needles, or those who had acupressure may think of it as someone pushing on the points. That is a very, very small part of it. It is your interface with your reality. This ties us right next to what can be called our spiritual energy. This I see separate from the Meridian system. This is a system that's based primarily on color and sound vibration. There's an electrical nature of it. And again, these chakras, or these centers, and you can see there's 7 of them, are correlated to nerve plexus in your body. So if you take your heart chakra, okay, it's associated with a color and a sound, and the nerve plexus around your heart are intelligent. The one on your abdomen, your sacral chakra and your solar plexus chakra, number 5 and 6 there, in that area there, by your belly button, are considered to be as intelligent as your brain. So the number of nerve plexes, nerve firing plexes in that area are phenomenal. In Eastern philosophy, the center of your body, the power of your body, your life force in your body comes from the lower chakras. In Tai Chi, it's considered probably the most important dantian area of your body, just below the belly button. Point out here that these nerve plexes are electrical in nature. They can be photographed. Okay, these auras, the energy is flowing off of this. This is where I think we can think about the mind, body, spirit interconnection, where your body, through meditation and through exercises like Tai Chi, Qigong, and yoga, can be tuned to these frequencies and colors and sounds. This energy has a shape to it, and this is where I'll leave off on this. It's something called a torus. So this energy flows out and around you. Again, it's measurable. It can be photographed, and most people that have been involved in this for any period of time can feel it. Some people say they can see it. It would be very disturbing to be able to see this torus flowing around you. You can see the evidence of it, okay? And there's no need to be actually to see it. It actually would just be what I would call unnecessary information, visual information. But you can feel it, and you know when someone's energy is strong and they're reaching out to you. So in this graph, you can see where the torus of one person is interacting with the torus of another. And you can imagine what happens in groups of people. The only political thing I'll mention here is that in the last 2 years, people were mandated to be 6 feet apart, which would prevent these torus energy fields from interacting. We were instructed to wear masks and not look at each other. Masks, and this is another whole thing. The mouth is very, very important for breath, but it's also a communication device. We speak through it, and nonverbal communication through the face and mouth is vital. So the way people communicate is through the torus and by facial recognition. Body language represents about 70 to 80% of the communication that's going on, and this torus field is part of that communication link. You can use this torus field to communicate with other people, but with animals and with plants and with nature. Again, perhaps another whole video where examples of how to meditate in nature to reconnect and ground this electrical torus field, and it is electrical, can be photographed, can be felt, and can be seen. It can be grounded in nature and with other people. Very, very powerful. So with that, I'll kind of leave you with this, and just the thought that There are many circulatory systems. I didn't hit them all. There are other ones, but these are the main ones that I wanted to hit. Wanted to give you some information. I also want to put slides in here that you could pause the video and look at it. If anyone wants the PowerPoint presentation that goes along with this, just email me. My email address is in the comments, and I would be pleased to send you the PowerPoint that you can use for yourself or for sharing this information. This is not my information. It's readily available. I'm just interpreting it based on what I have experienced myself and through working with other teachers. So with that, I will bid you good night, and please enjoy, practice your meditations, practice your Tai Chi, and hopefully I'll see you in a Tai Chi class.